Hello, hello. This is Ashley from Ashbea Music, and today we are going to be doing a composition stream. Now that we have our melody, we're now going to look at harmonizing it, putting chords to it. That's the next step. Any basic idea is going to have three main components. It's going to have a melody, it's going to have a chord progression, and it's going to have a bass line. So we need to figure out what's our chord progression. And to do that, we're actually going to dive into some theory. So a chord is more than one note played at the same time. That actually means that this could be a chord, or this could be a chord, or this. As long as it's more than one note played at the same time, it's a chord. But you might have noticed that a lot of these chords that I played didn't actually sound very good. So, how do we get to the chords that sound good? We use our scales, which are already patterns of notes that we know sound good together, and we make our chords from those. We have a particular word for different types of chords, and in this particular case, we are going to look at what we call triads. Triads are chords that have three notes in them. And the way we're going to work them out is we're going to use a particular pattern. So we've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. Those are our notes in our scale. And what we're going to do to figure out our triads in this key, we are going to use the formula play a note, miss one out, the next one, then the next one after that we're going to play, then the next one after that we're going to miss out, and then the next one after that we're going to play. And that gives us our three notes. So in this case, the tonic triad of G major is the G major chord, which is based on the notes G, B, and D. Then we have A, miss out the B, play the C, miss out the D, play the E. This gives us the second chord in the key of G major, the supertonic triad. Then the third note, we're going to miss out the C, we're going to play the D, we're going to miss out the E, and we're going to play the F sharp. So here's our third chord, and the third note is called the mediant. So this is the mediant triad. This is a chord of B minor. And then the next note, we're going to take the C, we're going to miss out the D, we're going to take the E, we're going to miss out the F sharp, and we're going to play the G, right? So chord 4, or the subdominant chord, is C major, C, E, G, right? Chord 5, we're going to take the D, we're going to miss out the E, we're going to take the F sharp, we're going to miss out the G, and we're going to play the A, right? D, F sharp, A. That's our D major chord, that's our dominant triad. The sixth note is called the submediant, and we're going to take this note, the submediant, we're going to miss out the F sharp, we're going to play the G, we're going to miss out the A, and we're going to play the B. This is our E minor chord, and then we're going to take the seventh note of the scale, which is F sharp. Okay, this is called the leading note, so we're going to make the leading note triad now. So this is the F sharp, then we miss out the G, we play the A, we miss out the B, and we play the C. This one sounds a bit different to the others because the combination of its intervals is different. If we have a particular set of intervals in a chord, it's going to have a particular sound. So all the major chords will sound similar because they all have the same sets of intervals. If we have minor chords, they're all going to have their own set of intervals, which are different to the major chords, but every minor chord will have the same interval pattern. And that's what makes it a minor chord. It's the relationships between the notes, or the relationships between the intervals, that give you the sound of the chord, right? This is different. To illustrate the difference, I'm going to go back to our major triad. I'm going to go back to the tonic triad of G major. And we're going to count the number of semitones in between each note. We're going to go G, then we're going to count the semitones between the G and the B. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have another 1, 2, 3 semitones between the B and the D. So we have 4 semitones and 3 semitones. Or in other words, we have the interval of a major third and a minor third. Okay, the major third comes first, which is why this is called a major triad. And then when we look at our next chord up, the supertonic triad, which is a minor triad, you're going to see a different pattern of intervals. We're going to take our A, we're going to count the semitones to the C. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to count the semitones from the C to the E. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now the intervals have reversed. Now we have the minor third coming first and then the major third after that. So minor third plus major third equals minor chord, right? Because the minor third comes first. So minor and major are actually opposites in music based on the number of semitones. Okay, now let's have a look at this leading note triad and let's see if we can figure out what intervals we have. I'm going to make it a little bit easier to see. I'm going to play the scale down here. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, and I'm going to take the F sharp, the leading note. I'm going to miss out the G. I'm going to play the A. I'm going to miss out the B and play the C. This is our chord here. Immediately you can tell it's got a different sound to a major chord or a minor chord, but what kind of sound is it? We're going to count the semitones first because that's the easiest thing to do. So we're going to take our F sharp, we're going to count the semitones, G, G sharp, so that's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got 3 semitones between the F sharp and the A, and then we have 1, 2, 3 semitones between the A and the C, right? So this chord has 3 semitones plus 3 semitones. And it sounds different because it's got a different interval combination. It's got 2 minor thirds in it this time. And it also sounds unstable because the other chords, if you notice, the major chord had 4 plus 3, which adds up to 7, which is the number of semitones in a perfect fifth interval. Then we have the minor chord, which has 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This is 3 plus 4, but it still adds up to 7. We've still got the perfect fifth in there, which is, again, a very stable interval, and it helps to reinforce the key. However, this triad, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, does not have a stable interval in it. In fact, instead of 7 semitones, it only has 6. And this interval here of 6 semitones actually creates an interval that we call a diminished fifth, which means that we call this chord or this triad the diminished triad. Okay, and this is every single leading note triad in any major key. So these are all the chords in the key. We have G major, the tonic triad, A minor, the supertonic triad, B minor, the mediant triad, C major, the subdominant triad, D major, the dominant triad, E minor, the submediant triad, and F sharp diminished, which is the leading note triad. And this is the complete list of triads in the key of G major. So we're going to use this to refer to when we are looking at how to harmonize our melody. Okay, so we're going to look at this first bar, and then what we're going to do is we are going to have a look at these 3 notes. We have a G in the melody, we have a D in the melody, and then we have another G. In order to choose the most appropriate chord, you want to look for 2 notes out of 3. If you want to be as safe as possible, all 3 notes would have to match, but we can be reasonably safe if only 2 out of the 3 notes match. So in this case, the most appropriate chord to choose for the beginning of our melody is our tonic chord, because the G and the D match our melody. So we're going to go back in and we're going to put a G major chord. So we've got this. Now we've got to do the same thing with the next chord. A, E, A. Which of our chords is most appropriate? In this case, it will be the supertonic, because we have the A and the E, and that's the only chord that actually has 2 of those notes. Now, what are we going to do for this next beat? We have a G going to an F sharp. Those 2 notes are right next to each other, so it's actually kind of difficult to find a chord that works with both of these, because we're either going to have a G in there or we're going to have an F sharp in there, but we're not going to have a G and an F sharp in one of our triads here. So what do you think could be most appropriate for this? We could try the tonic chord again, but then what's going to happen to the F sharp? I mean, it kind of works, but it will end up being pretty boring because we've only got 2 chords. Now, what we're going to do, we're kind of taking into account now the G. Let's try some other chords that have the G in them. The subdominant and the submediant. That could work. That could work. But there is another option available to us if we take into account the F sharp and actually not count the G as a chord note. We've got the F sharp in our mediant triad, and we've got it in our dominant triad, and we've got it in our leading note triad. So those are the 3 options we are going to pick from. So let's first try our mediant triad, chord 3. So now we have this. It's not great because it's just going 1, 2, 3. That's not the strongest chord progression you can make. Let's have a look at our dominant triad. See, this is quite interesting because we have tension on the G because it clashes with the chord that we have underneath. However, we have a resolution on the F sharp. That is very valid, and it is nice when you use tension and resolution in this way. You're giving your audience something more to pay attention to and to keep their interest. We also have one more to check here, the leading note triad, which is F sharp, A, and C. But this one doesn't really work because of its instability. Remember, we talked about those stable intervals earlier. This chord is not stable, so it's kind of hard to tell where it's going. If we wanted the strongest relationship between our key and the chord that we're currently on, we need to use our dominant chord here. So even though we have that little bit of dissonance in the G, that little bit of tension, we have the resolution, which makes it okay. And because our next beat has an E, an F sharp, and a G in it, the E and the F sharp mean that we can actually keep this chord going. And now we have a clash, right? We've returned to the G at the end of our phrase, but we haven't changed from our dominant chord, which doesn't have a G in it. So if we have a dissonant note going for a long time, we'll want to change the chord underneath to resolve that tension, to make it consonant, which means sound good. Dissonance is not bad because dissonance can be appropriate and very welcome in the right circumstances. So we should be careful about calling things good or bad, only appropriate or inappropriate. Okay, so in this case, our D major chord is inappropriate for the situation that it finds itself in. So we have the G here and the D major chord, which we need to resolve. And the easiest way to resolve a dominant chord is to the tonic, because the dominant and the tonic, the 5 and the 1, have a very special relationship. Okay, anytime the dominant happens, it wants to lead us to the tonic. So as the leading note leads to the tonic by going upward by a semitone, the dominant leads to the tonic by leaping downward. That is what creates the strong relationship and the reinforcement of the key. So what we're going to do is we're going to return to our tonic chord at the end of this bar. And what we've done here is we've created what we call an anticipation. There we go. So an anticipation means we have gotten to a note of a chord that we haven't come to yet. Our melody has gotten to the G before our chord has gotten there. And that's why it's called an anticipation. The melody is anticipating or foreshadowing the chord change. Okay, so we know that the G major chord is coming because we got to the G note before the chord happened. That's the anticipation. And in this case here, we have some very strong relationships to link us to the key of G major. So we have our chord 1, we have our chord 2, and chord 2 actually has a very strong relationship to chord 5. Chord 2 leads to chord 5 in the same way that chord 5 leads to chord 1. And by creating this cycle here, what we call the 2-5-1, we've actually reinforced our key. So we know without a shadow of a doubt that we are in G major. So here's what we have currently in our chord progression. 1, 2, 5, 1. With the next phrase, that's a complete repeat. So we're also going to repeat the chord pattern, because if the melody hasn't changed, then the chords don't need to change. So let's have a listen to what we have here. Then that repeats. Now we have to harmonize this part. You might already have realized, hang on a sec, we can copy the chord progression again at the end, and you'd be right. So we're going to do that as well. So we're going to take this, and we're going to copy it all the way to the end. That only leaves us 2 bars to harmonize. We've got D, 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 C, B. Okay, so we have no chords that have D, C, and B in them. We don't have any that have both a D and a C. Turns out we don't have any chords that have both a C and a B in them. Okay, so now, via a process of elimination, we have worked out that the 2 notes we need to be looking for are B and D. Which chords go with a B and a D? The answer should be obvious by now. It is our tonic triad. So if we go back here to our bar, we can actually put a tonic triad through the entire bar, and we get this. Now we have this. We have a C, we have a B, and we have an A. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the same process again. Do we have a C, a B, and an A in one chord? Well, the answer is no, because we don't have 3 notes next to each other in one of our nice sounding triads. Do we have a C and a B in a chord? Again, no, we don't. Do we have a B and an A in a chord? I can't see one. So we're going to look for a C and an A. We have a C and an A in the supertonic chord. We have a C in the subdominant. We have an A in the dominant. And we have an A and a C in the leading note chord. This could potentially get very interesting. let's go through some of these. So that's now our supertonic chord. That sounds nice. So supertonic chord actually kind of works. Let's see if we can move that to the subdominant chord. Again, that kind of works. Not as well as the supertonic because we have the C and the A in the supertonic chord. We only have the C in the subdominant chord, but it still works. Now let's check out the leading note chord. That works, but it's missing something. And we're going to talk about the relationship between this leading note triad and the dominant. So if you look at the dominant chord, it's a D, an F sharp, and an A. And if you look at the leading note triad, it's an F sharp, an A, and a C. Two of those notes are common to both chords, the F sharp and the A. So that actually means we can put the dominant note, the D, underneath the leading note triad. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a chord called the dominant seventh, because we have the D, the F sharp, and the A. So we've got the major triad, and then what we do is we take the D and we find the interval of a minor seventh above that. Okay, and we add that to the major triad, and the resulting sound, the 4-note chord, is called the dominant seventh. And this creates an even stronger relationship to the tonic. So that's what we're going to use here because it's the strongest relationship. The supertonic worked, but it's not the strongest relationship because 2 doesn't lead to 1. 2 leads to 5, as we talked about earlier. However, we know 5 leads to 1, and I've just told you that the dominant seventh creates an even stronger relationship between the 5 and the 1. So the dominant seventh is the best chord to use in this situation here. So with these 2 bars, we have the G chord going to the D7, which is the dominant seventh. Now that we have our complete 8 bars harmonized, let's have a playthrough of the whole thing so far. So there we are. That is a complete tutorial on how to write a melody, as well as how to harmonize it. Hey, this is Ashley. Thanks for watching this video. Follow us on Twitch to catch up with future streams, and subscribe to our channel to not miss future videos in this series. Here's a video YouTube thinks you'll like. We'll catch up with you again over there.